Why hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Sit Down. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. James Harvey. James Harvey is a journalist and political activist. He's worked with Vox Populi, he's worked with Urban Scoop, various big political figures such as Katie Hopkins, Tommy Robinson and his team at Urban Scoop. And we sat down to discuss the state of the UK. We sat down to discuss his founding of the Students Against Tyranny movement, why he felt that he needed to found such a movement, and the state of what's going on in educational establishments such as the one that I was in. Funnily enough, me and James, we went to university at the very same time. We don't know each other. We went to university at the very same time, and we were no more than several miles away from each other in two universities down in Swansea. And it shocked me to learn about the treatment that he'd been subject to by the faculty at the university, by professors, by the administrators, who tried to take any and all measure possible to get him kicked out of the university for his political opinions. That led to him founding Students Against Tyranny, and since then, it's led to his journalism and activism. It's created many documentaries, some of which are soon to come out that have not been revealed yet. James has done a lot of amazing work. He's very well up to date on a lot of the problems that we face and is able to talk about them in a very clean and concise way, able to make very complex subjects very easy to understand. And we need to do that in order to see the root of the problem and how we fight it. And who knows, we may have found a solution or two, or at least provided some guiding light to find a solution or two. All that and more whilst you ponder these 5 questions during our sit down. Are you fed up of government tyranny? Are you pro-freedom? Do you think that the government mishandled the pandemic? Do you feel alone and isolated in your beliefs? And do you inherently believe in our right to freedom of speech? Have a think about those, ladies and gentlemen. Have a think about how much they matter as you now listen or watch my sit down with Mr. James Harvey. Enjoy. Hey there, guys. How's it going? And welcome back to the Evidence-Based Excellence podcast yet again with your host, Mr. George Cresswell. I've got a really exciting guest today, really insightful guest I've been excited to get on ever since I became aware of his activities. His name is Mr. James Harvey, and he runs the Students Against Tyranny movement, and he also has worked with several popular news journalistic outlets, Vox Populi, Urban Scoop, and has done a lot of really, really good work in highlighting a lot of the injustices that are going on in the UK at the moment. And coming from somebody who's so young as well, a lot of the people we see talking about these issues are people from, people who are slightly older than James and myself. But it's really, really good to see young people being really switched on about what's going on with regards to UK politics, geopolitics, and ultimately the state of the country. So I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Harvey now, and he can give you a little bit of an introduction about himself. And we got a lot of great topics to talk about today. So James, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me on, George. So my name's James, right? So I run an organisation called Students Against Tyranny, and I started that in September 2021. What are we allowed to mention? Are there certain words we can't mention on here? What platforms are you streaming on?
It's be available on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify, Amazon Music, but go ham, and I can worry about the censoring the words later.
Perfect. So I started Students Against Tyranny back when the COVID lockdowns were happening, right? And so it all started when I went along to this thing from Anna Breeze. I don't like Anna anymore, but I went along to this thing from Anna Breeze where she wanted to do pictures for her website, against-vaccinepassports.com. And what was it? I did an interview with her. And so in this interview, I said, if you allow the government to violate your rights and break the law because of an emergency, they will create an emergency to break the law, right? Now, that went viral online. Yeah, it went absolutely viral, hit every corner of the internet. And so I didn't want to use that virality just to, go viral once and not do anything with it, right? I wanted to try and create change, be the change you want to see in the world, yeah? So I used that then to launch a campaign movement called Students Against Tyranny. When we started, we raised about £10,000 in the beginning, which, while £10,000 sounds like a lot, and, I'm very thankful for the massive amount of money we received, it goes very quickly, yeah? We spent it all on equipment, leafleting, transport, hotels. It adds up, and, a website which we have to pay for every year, yeah? So that's how I started, was through Students Against Tyranny. Now, through starting Students Against Tyranny, we then, I got introduced to the guys at Voice of Wales. And so that's when I started my journey also as a citizen journalist.
Mm-hmm.
In Wales, we had quite a few notable incidents around the time, with Cinema and Co.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a lot going on, the tourism tax at Danarogov Caves and quite a few things. So that's where I started my kind of journey as a journalist. Now, in terms of Students Against Tyranny, to give a bit of background into it, it started as what I would consider a social movement, right? So it's a social movement that, because a lot of young people at the time, they were facing an enormous societal pressures to get vaccinated. Yeah. Would that be from their friends, from their schools, from, their teachers, from the media, from the government, from their family. And so we
Workplaces.
wanted, yeah, exactly. So we wanted to start this movement to say, well, it's okay to not be vaccinated. You're not dirty. Yeah. You're not, you're still a human being at the end of the day. So that's how it started. But it's since transpired into an activism collective of young people opposed to institutionalized Marxism and the shutdown of free speech in university. The way I look at it is, if you look at every communist regime throughout history, whether you want to talk about the Khmer Rouge, whether you want to talk about Mao's Cultural Revolution, which is a big one, whether you want to talk about the Bolshevik regime, whatever communist revolution you look at it, they always target the students. And I believe it was KGB defector, Yuri Bezmenov, who said that the reason they target the students, the reason that it takes 15 years to install a dictatorship is because this is the number of years it takes to influence an entire generation of children. They come after your kids. They skip a generation. They come after your children. And when they manipulate your children, if you've read 1984, it's the children who are turning in the parents. Yeah. So we want to oppose that, and we want to be a right-wing organisation, because you have quite a few of them in the US. We want to be one in the UK that helps support students and helps revert universities to how they used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-decolonisation of the curriculum, pre-language revisionism, in the days when free speech was encouraged, yeah? And so that's what we turned into. And we've organised protests in Manchester, outside Manchester University. We've organised protests in Swansea. We've organised protests in Norwich. We've organised protests all over the country. And these are from different topics. So some of them about female spaces. We want to keep men out of female changing rooms. Some of them are about free speech, like in Manchester University, where that university conspired against the non-woke student to have him expelled. And then, 15-minute cities, which we organised in Swansea. And along the way, we started getting these massive counter-protests. And the funny thing is, so when I started Students Against Tyranny, was the first year I went to a university in Swansea called the University of Wales, Trinity St David's. I've since been kicked out of that university, which I'm sure we can go down in a minute, right? But the funny thing is, when I was organising protests in Swansea about 15-minute cities, the people coming out to counter-protest the demonstration were sitting in the exact same room with me at class, right? There was one guy in particular, he had blonde hair. I've actually got a video I'd love to send you later.
Please.
So what was it? I saw him at the counter-protest, yeah? And he was chanting "fascist scum off our streets," directed at me, yeah?
They love that one. They love that one.
They do, and I sometimes mix it up for Nazi cum on our sheet, whatever it is. But the funny thing is, right, he's calling me a fascist. I've sat next to this guy in class. He has never once said a word to me. Never, right? So a couple of weeks later, I see this guy leaving the university accommodation we're both staying in, right? And I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to go up to this guy, yeah? So I run up to him. I've got I got my phone on. I'm like, hey, why do you think I'm a fascist? And he says, I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want to talk to you. And, because they're not so big on their own, are they? They're only big in groups. And that was later proved because of an incident that happened next week, yeah? Next week, I decided to take out the bins from my flat. So I walked downstairs out into the outside area, and he's with his group of friends, and they're in the corner. They're laughing and they're shouting slurs at me that I'm a fascist and all this. So they're only big when they're in groups, yeah. But this is I just find it, absolutely astonishing that these people will sit in the same class as me, not say a word, and then they're more than happy to call me a fascist at a counter demonstration, right? Now, when I was at university, we were so there was a picture that was brought up on the screen of a Hindu woman and a member of the EDL, yeah, and we were being taught, or it was being implied and insinuated that that this Hindu woman was standing up to a member of the EDL. Now, I'm a long-time supporter of Tommy. I've worked alongside him for many years. I've worked alongside his team, and I've worked at Urban Scoop. Now, this is totally and utterly bollocks. Yeah, the EDL, they had a Hindu section, they had a Sikh section, they even had an LGBT section, right? So if anyone's going to throw, and the slogan was literally black and white unite the colours, unite the faith. Yeah. So so I took a 2-second video clip of this because it's not true what the picture was, what they were insinuating through this picture, right? All that was happening is they were having a discussion, a debate, which needs to be had in society, free speech.
Absolutely.
And I took a 2-second video clip, right? No one's face was in it. You couldn't hear anyone speaking. It was just me slowly zooming into the screen, what was being shown. And I put this out on social media. I sent it over to Tommy's team, who also put it out. And next thing you know, I'm being pulled into a disciplinary meeting, being told I'm not allowed legal representation because I was, I tried to bring along Niall McRae from the Workers of England Union. I was told I wasn't allowed any representation and I could be kicked out. Right. Luckily, I wasn't kicked out over that, but I was kicked out later on. So, they were trying to kind of target me from the start. But actually, later on, I sent off a subject access request to my university to get the emails about me. I put these out on my social media. I'll send them to you as well. And in these emails, they're looking for any excuse possible to kick me out. Yeah. So when I got arrested for the Kingdom of Sweets thing, so anyone who's not aware, Kingdom of Sweets is a child sweetie shop that was selling sex toys out in the open for children to grab. Me and a group of activists went in, including Sasha Brown from Banners and Bridges, and we went in multiple times. We took it off the shelves. I got arrested for criminal damage. Yeah. Now they were talking about that, and they thought I got arrested in Oxford, which isn't true. That's not what happened. And they were talking about that, and they were trying to find ways that they could kick me out. So this was going on for a while. Now, what I was actually kicked out for was that I was given a wrong date to submit work. Yeah. And so I submitted the work a week later. Right. A week later, because of a wrong date I was given. I've got proof that they gave me the wrong date, but they still kicked me out anyway. Yeah. So, so that's kind of my story there with Students Against Tyranny. But moving on. So when I got kicked out, I know I'm sorry if this run along a little bit, but there's so much to get into.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you, mate. So when I got kicked out, and audio and video still working okay?
Yeah,
perfect.
I love it. You ever had it in Joe Rogan where they leave the comments being like, it was nice to see like Joe Rogan as the guest on his own podcast? I'm loving this. I'm making notes as we go along. I'm loving this. Just keep the idea stream coming.
Cheers, mate. So when I was kicked out, it was a very dark time in my life. Yeah, very dark time. Now, I don't know if many of you got experience in, many viewers or you in particular have got experience in trying to get a job in the modern epoch. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. Whether we want to talk about the DEI policies favouring black people and minorities, even though they're the global majority over white people, and also the fact that a lot of jobs at the moment, because of the recession, they're putting out what you call ghost vacancies. So it's where they want to give the impression to their competition that they're actually growing, but the job offer isn't actually there. Yeah. So I spent ages trying to find a job, and I was completely unable to. I moved back in with my parents at this point. And this is when I was like, I can't live with my parents forever, yeah? So I messaged quite a few of my friends and I found somewhere to live in Sudbury, right? In Suffolk. And I've never told anyone I lived in Sudbury, but there you go. And and I was living on, at this time, I was living on about £400 a month. That's it, yeah? £200 of that was rent. And the rest of the £200 was... It was split between food and travel, right? And at this point as well, I had a girlfriend, Sydney Jones, from the channel Journo Jones. And so having a girlfriend, I'm sure you can imagine how expensive that is. And I only lived on £400 a month. But luckily, she supported me through it. And, she was very understanding of the fact that at the time, I didn't have much money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was at this point then that I started working in sales with a mate of mine. I'm not going to say who the mate is, but I started working in sales, right? And I was absolutely rubbish at it. Rubbish. I could not sell, right? So I would only get paid on commission. I wouldn't get paid hourly, right? So I was basically at that time working for nothing. And then on the side, I was writing my book, which I haven't continued writing in a while, but it's about 60,000 words at the moment. So what I did, I remember Sydney, my girlfriend, coming round, and I remember us, like, some nights I'd be really stressed about my future and not knowing what I was going to do. And so I remember calling absolutely everyone, seeing if there was any other job I could get. And eventually I found a job working with Vox Populi. Now, at this time, as you know, I also mentioned I work with Urban Scoop. So with Urban Scoop, it's very much freelance. If they need a video done, they'll message me, they'll tell me what they want me to do. I'll say, yeah, this is my day rate, blah, blah, blah. And so, that's how it works with Urban Scoop. Now, with Vox Populi, it's a little bit different. I submit videos. I'm now a video editor and a cameraman for them as well. I set up all their lighting, that kind of stuff as well. But I with Vox Populi, I started and I slowly started earning more and more money. And luckily that took me out of that debt. And now I'm in a much better position. I've moved up to Cambridge now. So that's where I live now, is in Cambridge. And the kind of stuff I do with Vox Populi, I cover a lot of the grooming gangs, a lot of the ULEZ, a lot of the farmer protests, that kind of stuff. My big thing at the moment is that, Callum Smalls recently filmed a documentary in Sweden. I edited that. And so I've been editing that for the past couple of weeks. That's going out in a couple of days, I think. And what else have I been doing? Oh yeah, I've been doing my Rochdale stuff. So I went down to Rochdale. I did a little documentary. I'm not going to say exactly what it's on yet, but I'd love to send it to you when it comes out, because
Thank you.
The story that we got is quite big. It's breaking news. And so once that documentary is finished, it's going to be good. And I mean, so I walked around Rochdale town centre with Billy Howarth from Parents Against Grooming. We did a little tour, he showed me the area. And then I did a tour of Oldham, which is another grooming gang hotspot, with John Lawrence as well. So that's the kind of stuff I do now, is journalism on the side. And, Students Against Tyranny then as well. So when we started, we obviously, it was quite a slow build. Eventually, we built up to about, at the height of COVID, I want to say it was about 400 to 500 members, right? That then, after COVID ended, as numbers did with absolutely everything, it dropped down to about 3. It was me, Sydney and Wes, yeah? Slowly then, we built it back up. At the moment, currently on the website, it's about 180 to 190 members, and that's for this semester. So the way it works is that university students, they come in, and then when they leave university, they leave Students Against Tyranny. But they can stay until they're 25 if they wish to, right? And so every year, we get rid of members and new members join. And so at the moment, it's at about 180 to 190. And, we've been organising, our main one at the moment is organising protests in Norwich. So the University of East Anglia, which is based in Norwich, is a very woke university. I'll give you an example of how woke they are, right? Their library has a link where you can submit books to have trigger warnings slapped to them.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, that's
says it all, doesn't it?
It does. That's the society we live in, where students are now scared of words.
I'm glad you brought up the University of East Anglia as well, because it was in one of the videos I was watching just before to do a last minute preparation before we were doing for this. You mentioned, and it was one of the other things I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to get too sidetracked now, but it was to do with somebody you knew, or a case you've been made aware of, where I believe it was a female student was changing, and then they were greeted with a naked man when they were changing using the female changing facilities. I believe this would have been back, based on the time frame we gave in the video, I think was the first quarter of 2023, I think would have been when this incident took place. And the thing that shocked me is that if she wanted to either raise concern or, pursue some kind of action to have this stopped, is that she would be met with disciplinatory action. And, it's just, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the issues I wanted to bring up with you with regards to the University of East Anglia as an example of this woke mind virus gone mad.
Yeah, no, you've hit the nail on the head. So it wasn't actually a student who was changing, I don't think.
Right.
It was basically there was an incident at the UEA Sports Park. So the University of East Anglia Sports Park is linked to the university, and it's where you can play different sports. You can play tennis, you can do the racquetball, I think it's called. Swimming, you got gym there, you got a gym facility there, that kind of stuff, right? And there was a female. There was just a female in the using change facilities there, because it's open to the public as well, right?
Gotcha.
There was a female that was changing there, and she was greeted by the sight of a naked man. Now, this incident didn't just happen once; it happened twice. Now, we know quite a lot of people who use that sports park, because my girlfriend's based in Norwich. So I actually asked around, and it turns out this naked man uses the female changing facilities like quite regularly. It happens every couple of weeks. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, it is really scary. Imagine your daughter, you take your daughter to get changed, and you with that sight. It's absolutely abhorrent. Now, the UEA Sports Park, they put out a statement where they didn't actually address anyone's questions or concerns. They just said they wanted to make their facility as inclusive as possible. And it brings me back to that meme where you see, have you seen that cartoon meme where there's a young girl being raped by a bunch of Muslims, and then
on the altar of multiculturalism?
Yeah, the father's being arrested because be tolerant, you bigot. That's just kind of what I feel like.
Makes me sick to my stomach every time I see it.
Exactly. And for Ash Wednesday, I put this out on Twitter. For Ash Wednesday, I'm giving up tolerance for Lent. Right, that's what I'm giving up. I'm going to be as intolerant as possible now.
Respect.
So, so this is what's going on with the UEA Sports Park, and we've been organising protests about this now for months. We've had a Labour MP, Clive Lewis, come out and counter-protest us, and which isn't the first time an MP's actually come out to counter-protest us, but it's sad that there's this many people who were so desperate just to allow men into female changing rooms. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Shocking how many of them would self-identify as feminists as well. Especially the women. It's absolutely shocking. It's almost like it's come. I've seen. It's kind of funny. They always put Rachel Maddow, the MSNBC, I think it's MSNBC anchor, on the image, and it says like first wave feminism is like the traditional things that the feminists were trying to, whether it was voting rights or working rights, whatever it is, or like it's like we're just as good as the men. The second one is we are better than the men, and then the third generation feminists, we are men. That's the way the meme is running at the moment, and any woman that seems to want to stand against this, they get labeled as, what is it, a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, I believe. Is the term, just for not wanting. I think it's like Julie Bindel is a good example. It's just not wanting, men in female only spaces, and whatever way you want to slice it, it is a risk to them, to their physical, to whatever thing could happen, especially if it's a young child or whatever,
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at so it's Oxford University, right? After that whole row with Kathleen Stock happened. So Kathleen Stock is I don't want to call her a TERF because that's the left-wing label for it, but she's very much gender critical. That's the term, right? Gender critical. And she was meant to speak at the Oxford Union address, but then because of the massive protests from there were massive protests from left-wing groups. Now, the actual Oxford Union isn't actually tied with the university, so the university couldn't do anything about it, right? Even though they wanted to stop them from hosting her as a speaker. So what they did to make up for it is they started excluding students who misgendered other pupils.
Oh, God.
This is what happens in a lot of universities. If you misgender someone, they will come after you, right? And and so this is the problem. At Norwich University, or University of East Anglia, sorry, there's about 15 students who agree with us, but they're scared to come out for two reasons. One is repercussions from their university, and two is being attacked by far left terrorist groups like Antifa. So they're not the only universities to do that. You can find many examples of universities who have started punishing students for having gender critical views. It's disgusting. And Connie Shaw is another one. She's been through hell with it at university for her opinions on trans. Absolute hell she's been through. Yeah.
Utterly disgusting. Utterly disgusting for something as simple and what used to be just common sense. But now you can be punished. You can be punished for that. And I think it was in Orwell. I think it was in 1984. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's basically been the instruction manual for what's been going on. Like, if anybody hasn't read that one, and Animal Farm, I think, is another tremendous one for such a short book. I think it's only like 100 pages or something like that. There's so many valuable insights in there to what happens in a Marxist socialist revolution, and especially the aftermath. That's what people don't think. And going back to the education system again, it made me think, and I've gone back and thought about it so much time, because in comprehensive school, I didn't study it from much from then onwards, but we were taught about the Russian Revolution in comprehensive school, but they didn't teach us anything from 1917 onwards. And then I made me think, I wonder why. Up until the point where, they taught us about the evils of the Tsar, the 1905 revolution, Bloody Sunday, all of these things. And then they got to 1917 when the communists took over, and then that was when it stopped. Now, they were all happy in the American history module to teach us about Watergate and to teach us about all of these other things and go through all of Reagan's presidency and really shine those people in a really bad light. But they never wanted to touch the aftermath of the communist revolution, which I thought, looking back on it now, there was a reason why.
Well, we can, even if we refer back to Mao's Cultural Revolution, and that's the one that you can compare very similarly to what's going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in Mao's Cultural Revolution, they also called it Year Zero. This is where they would start anew, and they would attack anything that they considered the old, yeah?
I think Khmer Rouge did as well, didn't they? I think the Khmer Rouge did something very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of them did something very similar. It's an entire form of Marxism. It's cultural Marxism. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Marx didn't actually write about it. So the way I've always looked at it, because Marx never actually wrote about any of this stuff to do with cultural Marxism, but he gets blamed for a lot of what's going on. The way I look at it is that Marx provided the foundation. So the foundation he provided from a pure economic theory, right? And then people started building on that. And Mao, he added the cultural aspect, yeah? And then you have the progressive aspect that was later added as well. And so it all links together. And that's how I think that Marxism works in the modern age, yeah? So with, and cultural Marxism, it was literally developed by Marxists at the Frankfurt School in Germany, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Max Horkheimer and all the rest of them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. At the moment, they attack anything that they consider the old, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
They attack anything that they consider the old, and you have to adhere to their one narrative, the new narrative, which is progressivism,
mm-hmm.
yeah? That's the new narrative. Black Lives Matter. That's the new narrative, yeah? And, that, and the way they're doing that in universities is through two things that I mentioned to you in Twitter DMs, was the Race Equality Charter and the Athena Swan Charter, right? So
I was going to ask you about that latter one especially, yes.
Yes, so both of these, so the Race Equality Charter and then the Athena Swan Charter, they're run by an organisation called Advance HG, right? Now, the Race Equality Charter, they focus on race, and the Athena Swan Charter, they focus on gender. What they do is they reward universities for adhering to a racial or gender equality narrative, right? So if a university, for example, let's say the University of Cambridge, they provide a proposal for how they're going to make their school more racially inclusive, or their university more racially inclusive, then they will, and the proposal is good enough, they'll receive a bronze award. As they then get a silver award when they actually start taking steps to achieving that. So when you're seeing like the University of Cambridge, who's got a silver award, by the way, yeah, they've got a silver award. When you're seeing the University of Cambridge running courses that are only for minority students and now white people are completely excluded from, somehow they're rewarded for that by an organisation that's funded directly by the government. It's disgusting. They're funding the war against us. And then another example, again, the University of East Anglia, right? They did a year 10 field trip, called Uni Unlocked. And Uni Unlocked is about giving young year 10s a taster of student life, right? They get to stay in student flats of other year 10s, participate in sports clubs and society taster sessions, and just get a general taste of what university life is all about, yeah? White people were told they weren't allowed, white year 10s. were told they weren't allowed to attend. And then you would ask why, right? So on the one side, they say it's to boost diversity uptake, right? It's the same reason they claim they do female-only engineering clubs in secondary schools, yeah? They say that it's to boost diversity uptake in a particular profession, in this case, to get more minority students in university. If you look at the figures, white people are entering into university at a lower rate than every other ethnicity. Asians are highest. No, Chinese is the highest, sorry. You know, black people are even going to university more than white people. So why are they doing it? It's pure anti-white racism. That's what's going on in university. And then these same universities will get rewarded by an organisation that's funded by our government. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting. And not only that, not only do they get not only does Advanced HE receive funding for the race equality and Phoenix Swan charters, but they also, when an investor sees that a university has got the race equality charter, the Phoenix Swan charter, they're more likely to give more money. Especially when you've got the Soros-backed organisations, chiming in. Honestly, it's massive. It's despicable. It's despicable what's going on. Now, I mentioned this as well to you. Is at the University of Edinburgh, right? So there's a big problem in the UK with Chinese funding universities, right? Now, I understand with the Russia stuff, there was an organisation that was funded to kind of make a little bit of propaganda. I'm not going to get into that actually. But So the Chinese are funding a lot of UK universities to a very, very, very large extent. Now, something I mentioned to you was decolonisation. Now, that's a big topic that's plaguing university, the field of university at the moment, yeah? At the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, they're doing this, So there were researchers and academics there who were awarded £800,000 by the UK Research Innovation Council to decolonise a Scottish author, poet and novelist called Robert Louis Stevenson. Now,
his name just come up in one of the videos I was watching, because you brought up some interesting points about it. I'm not going to try and reiterate them, because I feel that I'll get them wrong, because I've only just watched it. But you brought up some interesting points in one of the daily debrief videos that I watched about this guy.
Yeah. So, So I'm assuming then have you read some of his work before, or?
I haven't, no, personally.
Right. So he's written quite a few famous books, like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and quite a few other things. Yeah. So these are really famous books. He's a very famous author, and he's very renowned in Scotland. He's very much loved. Yeah. Now, the left want to claim... Sorry, I know there's a bad light coming on me, but I need to get some better shades for the window.
That's perfectly fine, don't worry.
So there's... He's... I'm just trying to get my point. Oh, yeah. So the left want to claim that he is... he perpetuated a few colonial stereotypes in his work, right? That's what they want to claim. Now, I haven't read a lot of his books. I would claim that he was very critical of Western imperialism, yeah? So he's actually quite progressive for his time frame, yeah? He was very critical of Western imperialism and colonialism, right? But because he perpetuated a few colonial stereotypes, even by accident, he deserves to have his whole life's work ruined, yeah? He's now in a grave. He can't defend himself, and yet they're going to, you don't talk bad about the dead. Do you get what I mean? Unless it's Jimmy Savile or a pedophile. But they're decolonising his... There are exceptions, I get that. But they want to decolonise his work, yeah? Now, the reason this is hypocritical, and it's extremely hypocritical, is because that exact same university has received millions and millions and millions of pounds from organisations directly linked with the People's Liberation Army. The People's Liberation Army, the same one responsible for the Tiananmen Square massacre, the same one responsible for the persecution, imprisonment and torture of Falun Gong practitioners, which is the Chinese equivalent of yoga. Yeah, they are the People's Liberation Army have a long list of human rights abuses, right? But you won't talk about that. No. You'll talk instead about this author that's now dead who wrote a few things that may have perpetuated a few stereotypes. Well, guess what? Stereotypes exist for a reason. They exist for a reason. They exist from experience.
Exactly.
If a black man's walking down a road, right, and he sees a group of skinheads, absolutely completely bald, no hair, and they're white. It's a very white neighborhood. He's going to cross the street, right? If I walk down a black neighborhood with the hoods right, and I see a gang of black people, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You build stereotypes from experience. Stereotypes are not racist, yeah?
Mm.
So now there's more interesting things about Edinburgh University. So Edinburgh University, their head teacher there is Peter Mathiasen. Why is this interesting? Well, because before 2017, he was the head teacher of Hong Kong University in China. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And coincidentally, 2017 is the same year that university stops receiving funding from China. The same year. So the reason that he left Hong Kong University and came to Edinburgh was because he was was because he made a few pro-CCP anti-democracy statements. He offered to work with the police and punish those who were protesting against the CCP. Yeah. Because at the time, previous to 2017, there was a big thing on university campuses in all over China, especially Taiwan and Hong Kong, I believe, where they were putting up banners at the university. He was offering to work with the police. And so because of that, he was forced to step down, and he went over to the Edinburgh University, where he then became the head teacher. He was actually headhunted, and I think he's on like a £150,000 a year salary. He's one of the highest paid people in the UK.
That's nice.
As a head teacher. Yeah, exactly. It's really nice. So he's the highest head teacher paid in the UK, and he's a Chinese citizen, right?
Say 150 odd grand to decolonize the curriculum and throw shade on this one Scottish author that can't get up to defend himself because he's obviously long passed on. But the reason there, I'm glad you pointed out the double standard, because I was talking with I just wanted to have a conversation with Paul Ashton of the Abolish Welsh Assembly Party just to see what they were doing, see what their sort of stance was on a lot of different things. But the topic come up in a way of this double standard, and it relates. The one thing that popped out in my mind when you said about how we want to put all the focus on, say, this one Scottish author and not focus on what China's doing, it is the whole thing with like net zero and stuff like that. Whereas we are forced to, go into this energy, poverty, sustainability, UN Agenda 2030, ruts. And China is no scrutiny and is building coal power plants like there's no tomorrow. So there's that double standard there where it's like, come on. And it's just amazing me how many people just don't see it.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. And I mean, it gets worse, actually, funny enough, at this same university. So Edinburgh University is home to the first Scottish Confucius Institute. Now, Confucius Institute is a direct link between a Chinese university and a UK one, right? They act as kind of they want to promote Chinese culture, the Chinese language, like Mandarin, and a lot of Chinese students who study in the UK will be attending these Confucius Institutes, which a lot of universities across the UK have them, right? But what comes with the Confucius Institute is a pairing. So this pairing is directly between, like, Swansea University, for example. They are paired with Wuhan University. Yeah. So they have like a twin university agreement, so they work together. Yeah. Now, Edinburgh University has one as well. I can't remember exactly what Chinese university they're paired with, but they are paired with one. Now, the Scottish Confucius Institute, they are home to quite a few speakers. What they actually are, what these Confucius Institutes actually are, I'm going to call them CIs. What these CIs actually are is they're like overseas Chinese Communist Party police stations, right? They keep tabs on Chinese students. They subvert issues on Taiwan, Tibet, and stuff like that, because to them Tibet's not a state. By the way, in their contract in the UK, if you want to work at a Confucius Institute as a Chinese citizen, you're not allowed to practice Falun Gong. That's another thing as well, right? But it's called Scottish Confucius Institute for Business. That's one at Edinburgh University. Yeah. Now they've housed quite a few speakers. One of the speakers is it Victor Zhang? I think it's Victor Zhang. There's quite a few names. I don't know. I know they definitely housed one. I can't remember what his name is exactly. I think it's Victor Zhang, who worked at the United Front Works Department. Now, why is this interesting? Well, the United Front Works Department is the Chinese Communist Party propaganda branch.
Is it actually?
Yes. It's their propaganda branch. They've flown over to the UK and they've spoken at a Confucius Institute with Edinburgh University students at. I don't understand this. How are people okay with this? And I mean, if you go deep down the rabbit hole of Confucius Institutes, which is now run by a company called Hanban, in China, right? It's directly controlled by the United Front Work Department. Yeah. Now, there's actually there was a documentary done. I can't remember who did it, but there was a documentary done on Confucius Institutes, and in it they found evidence that they were that the Confucius Institutes, if you asked them about Tibet, they would say it's not a state. If you ask them about Taiwan, they would say it's not a state. It's part of China. So they are directly controlled by the United Front Work Department, and we are allowing it in the UK. So we're fighting this war on so many different fronts. We have language revisionism, with the inclusive language guides at Surrey University, Edinburgh University, and a bunch of others. Yeah, you have this institutionalized Marxism, the shutdown of free speech. You have Confucius Institutes, decolonization, everything all going on at once. They are trying to come after the young people because everything starts with them. Every communist regime throughout history, and I'm going to reiterate this point, every communist regime throughout history has been conducted by the students, by the young people.
The Red Guard.
Exactly. The Red Guard is a perfect example. They went out and they beat their teachers to death.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think it's possible now, but so did everyone who was under Hitler's regime in Nazi Germany. They didn't think it would happen to them, but it did. There was a perfect example that was done in California. I think it was in the 1970s, called the third wave experiment, right? And so so a student asked his teacher, "How did Hitler get the people of Germany to go along with this? I would never go along with it." And so he said, "All right, bet." And over the next 5 days, over the next 24 hours, he constructed a plan. And in the next 5 days, he successfully turned that entire school into what was pretty much a Nazi regime. Like, honestly, it's a really interesting experiment. Go look it up. I couldn't tell you the ins and outs because I can't remember every single detail. It's a really long story. But look it up. The third wave experiment, right? It is an incredibly interesting experiment that proves that this can be done. And especially with university students who are more impressionable and they're more prone to ideologies that present a moral luminescence like socialism. Because socialism
and radicalization.
Yeah.
And radicalization, absolutely. And you said that was out of California. That experiment was out of California, you said?
Yeah, California. I'll get it out now.
Okay,
just see. Third wave experiment.
That sounds like some very interesting reading.
Yeah, so it was in 1967 by a high school history teacher, Ron Jones. Yeah, I think it was in California as well. Just look it up. Third wave experiment, man. They've got a documentary and a movie on it. So, give it a watch, mate. It's really interesting.
There we are. Definitely
really
look at that.
What they did.
But yeah, and it hardly surprises me because you only have to see the footage on X, coming out, and oftentimes I don't really see the same footage coming out on Facebook and other platforms. I see it coming out a lot more on X, and obviously the government has a whole thing with X. They want to try and shut it down because obviously they want to try and control the flow of information and all of these things. But you only need to see the chants and the backing of it. It's the made up chants, the fascist scum off our streets or Nazi scum off our sheets. I'm getting mixed up with what you said now. Yeah. But it's just and it all comes from people that are around our sort of age groups. So I was thinking, you're 21?
Yeah.
Right, 21. So I'm 25. Around our age group, where people who were in uni, I don't know how I missed it, because you're saying a lot of these things were happening when I was in my second year of uni, and you said you were in the Trinity campus, wasn't it? St. David?
Yeah.
I was just down the road in the Bay campus studying sport. So that's why I was like, I don't know how, it never occurred to me that this was going on. I didn't see any of this going on. Maybe it was because I didn't stay on campus and I didn't really associate with too many people and stuff like that. And so I just kept my head down. I didn't see it. But I didn't know that all this was going on. I just think all of this stuff that was going on with you, where your professors and the university itself are trying to get you kicked out, and it was literally just down the road from where I was. That's mad to me. That's mad to me.
When were you studying there?
2019 to 22.
Oh, so you would have been there at the same time I was?
Yeah, 2019 to 22, yeah. I was studying sports and exercise science down in the Bay campus.
Nice.
And literally, I think the biggest thing that happened was when the lockdowns hit, I was at home. So I think that's maybe what allowed me to miss out on a lot of it. Just coming back then in the third year to do my dissertation, most of it was online. But, to think that It was probably going on in the campus that I was at as well. If it was going on the other campus down in Swansea, then there's no doubt it was going on the Bay campus as well. I'm just thinking, like, you know, how many other students have been affected by this that we don't know about, for example, that maybe have tried to speak out about this or have been, you know, cowed down and forced into submission to this ideology because I don't know, maybe they'll get scholarships revoked or even just the social element, the social stigma of being, you know, what I believe Mao he gave it good identities as red and he gave bad identities as black. And there's not like a racial thing. There's just an arbitrary distinction that he made, I believe. But, you know, having one of these identities that people look at almost like a stinking leper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. How much, so, do you mind if I ask you, do you still live in Swansea?
I don't live in Swansea, no.
So when you were down there at that university, were you living on campus?
No, I was commuting.
Commuting, right. So I'm just trying to get an image. How much do you know about Swansea?
Not a whole amount. I know from following, you brought them up earlier, the Voice of Wales lads, well, lads and lasses, I should say. But you know, I know they do a lot of work, and I know it's quite a hotbed for a lot of left-wing, left-leaning, and pro-Palestine activity.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't really know too much about it. A lot of what I was down there for, I was very much a loner. I was very much a loner at that time, so I just sort of kept my head down, and you know, maybe a large reason I didn't get caught up in it all was because I didn't go to class all that often. Maybe that was a reason why I didn't get caught up in it all.
You know, sometimes though, mate, it's better because I couldn't handle being around a bunch of woke lunatics these days. You get what I mean? So sometimes
Same.
it is better to be alone for your own sanity with these people because they are insane, aren't they? But the reason I bring that up, right, is did you know that Swansea has a twin city agreement with Wuhan as well?
I say you just brought that up now. I was thinking because that's quite an institute to bring up, given what we had the last couple of years, especially around that 2021 mark.
It's not just a university. So usually it's just a university that's paired with a Chinese one. But in this case, it's the entire city has a friendship agreement with each other, right? Now, there's a leader of Swansea Council called Rob Stewart, the leader of Swansea Council, yeah? And I once managed to catch up with him, and I asked him, well, what gives? And he said, we brought friendship agreements in place after the Second World War to bring the values of democracy over to that country. That's what he said about China, right? So then I said, well, what about the sanctions you've just placed against Russia? And he said, oh yeah, I'm fully in support on the sanctions I've placed against Russia because Putin is bad. So on the one side, you want to bring the values of democracy over to China, but on the other side, you don't want to bring those values over to Russia. So I you know, there's a bit of a double standard there as well. Swansea is an incredibly bad city, really. It's really a bad city. The universities aren't too bad. I find with the creative universities like the University of Wales Trinity St David's, I think Swansea Bay could fit into that category a little bit. They are less woke as a general rule. It's usually, well, not entirely. It's the arty university that become incredibly woke, and the liberal arts colleges. But yeah, God.
I know one in Cardiff blocked me on Twitter, blocked me on X once. That was quite funny. I called them. I can't remember what one it was. It was a university in Cardiff. I believe they've unblocked me now, so to get all the prefaces out of the way. But at one point they did block me because somebody who I followed on X highlighted something, and I basically just parroted them. I said, "Oh, look what this university's doing." I think it was to do with the whole gender inclusivity stuff. And I basically just called them out on it. They say, "I know I'm blocked on there," and then they went back and unblocked me. Bear in mind, I have like, what's my X follow account? It's nothing. My X follow account is nothing. Let's have a little look. I have a grand.
94.
There we go. I have nothing at all in terms of that like kind of social media presence. So and they blocked me. So I was like, I did find that quite hilarious. I was like, you know, where's the free speech gone? You know, the universities used to be, as you said, bastions of free speech. You know, the Oxford Union, I believe, used to be a really like prestigious, and I'm not saying it isn't a prestigious institution, but you know, very the name carries a lot of weight. And I think, I can't remember who it was, but I know Winston Marshall made a nice speech there when Nancy Pelosi was there a good couple of months ago. Might have been a year ago now. I can't exactly remember when it was, about populism and stuff like that. But there was another one where somebody tried to speak. I know Ben Shapiro spoke in there as well, but I believe it was somebody trying to, it was a pro-Israel, pro-Palestine thing. And everybody's just getting up and chanting these genocidal slogans. There's no like debate or rigorous conversation going on. And it's just like, what the hell has this devolved into?
No, you're right. I mean, so Oxford Union is about 200 years old, 200 years, and they've hosted anybody who's anyone there. Do you get what I mean? They've hosted people from, I mostly know people on the right, but they've hosted people from, even on the left, Narinda Kaur spoke there. They've had, Katie Hopkins, Tommy Robinson, Winston Marshall, as you mentioned. They've, George Galloway. They've had a lot of people, anyone who's anybody has spoken at the Oxford Union, and they've got a very big reputation for never cowering down, right? They will host controversial speakers. It doesn't matter what topic they're speaking on, they will host them. Yeah. I think they've even hosted people who've gone down the path of saying that Hitler was right. Yeah. So they're a very prestigious organization, and they take the idea of free speech very literally and very they don't sway, right? Free speech is free speech. That's their opinion. And that's, the right opinion to have. Free speech is free speech. And you mentioned the war there as well. So I've been of the opinion, and you've probably seen on my Twitter recently, that it doesn't matter. I just want the dying to stop. The only people that war benefits is the elites who profit on both sides. Look at, Henry Ford, who collaborated with the Nazis and with the British during World War II. Yeah, he collaborated with both sides in the war. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Look it up, mate. It's really interesting. The Rothschilds did as well. So the war. There's no profit in peace, is there? There's only profit in war. And so right now they're trying to push us down this path of getting involved in a war, and it looks like that's going to happen soon. But the US recently just removed the US recently just removed the UK's top level security clearance. So hopefully we're forced in a position where Trump comes in and stops us from going to war, because to be honest, I don't want to get conscripted, because this is a war I do not believe in.
And I absolutely agree in that sense, and I'm very much so of the opinion, and I think it baffles me when, and I think it's just when people either don't want to see it or they haven't seen it yet for whatever reason, it is how much danger we're in at home due to things like mass migration and these kinds of things. I think Connor Tomlinson, put out a very alarming stat. I think this was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, where I think it was like the most up-to-date recent figures over a given time frame of how many people had entered illegally. I believe it was just illegally, and it was in, upwards of 700,000, I think it was. I can't remember the exact time frame, so I'm not going to put an exact time frame on it to say getting that wrong. But I'm just thinking, like, there's basically you got to take into account the ideology that a lot of these people are bringing over. I think that's absolutely something that's got to be considered. That we basically have, and I think it was Christopher Hitchens said this: the barbarians are no longer at the gate; they're already inside. The gate has been held open for so long that the barbarians are already inside, and we've seen that, and now it makes me doubly concerned and doubly fearful, the fact that now the government's like, oh no, you can be sent away to a faraway land to die and leave your family back home, at the mercy of us and at the mercy of the people that we've brought in. And I think a lot more people are seeing it now. They're trying to send just, regular working class, all class people rather, but, regular British people to die in Ukraine or whatever front it may be, and not be able to defend their home. And I think that's why ultimately, I think they hadn't, in my opinion, willfully, massively mismanaged this. It all started back before we even were born in like 1997 with the Blair administration. But, if that hadn't have happened, maybe people's attitudes would have been different towards the conflict over there at the moment. And maybe if we'd been in a much better and more secure position, maybe people's attitudes would have been different. And I know a lot of people just get called Putin stans and everything like that if they object to it. But no, it's more so the more pressing matter is what we have at home, because that's been under direct threat for decades now. And now we're really on the risk of losing it all.
Yeah, well, you're right. So when the heinous Southport attack happened, I remember my girlfriend being in absolute tears, and she was terrified about the prospect of bringing up children, right? Because I've always wanted kids. I think that's the whole reason we exist on Earth, is to have children, so reproduce. That's biologically our main purpose, our only purpose, isn't it? It's to reproduce.
Certainly one of the biggest,
Definitely one of the biggest, yes. And so when that happened, I remember her being in tears and, crying quite heavily. And then it got worse when people on Twitter disgustingly started sharing the pictures of these dead children lying down on the ground. And that, kind of triggered it again. And so, I want to have children at some point within the next few years, right? Now, say I was to have children, and then, my newborns, they arrive, and then that's when I'm conscripted to go off and fight for Ukraine or whatever, right? I'm then going to be, as you've said, I'm then going to be in a different country while in a place where I cannot protect my children and my girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? So while I'm off fighting someone else's war, killing people in a different country for a war that I don't care about, there's a current war, an unspoken war that's going on in the UK. An unspoken war where mostly migrant men, and mostly Islamic migrant men, are going around killing our children. Not only our children, our women. They barely
doing
attack
God
men.
knows other terrible, heinous things that have come out in the court transcripts recently. Truly harrowing reading.
Yeah.
Truly harrowing reading.
There's a lot. And, grooming's a big problem at the moment. And I know exactly how grooming works. And the biggest way they do it is by creating a drift between you and the parents. But if they've got the father out of the way, now, I mean, look, let's talk like single mother socialization. If anyone's heard about single mother socialization, where there's no father involved in the child, right? What usually happens then is that if the child's a girl, they usually tend to be more promiscuous, right? I can't remember what my point was with that, but I had a really interesting point. Sorry, 2 seconds. It's too hot in here.
Honestly, take your time. I lose my train of thought all the time as well.
Oh yeah. So they end up being more promiscuous and being more daring, right? And there's an issue with single mothers. Like if a son is brought up with a single mother, he's more likely to get into drugs, go to prison, murder, rape, that kind of stuff. So if there's no father in the picture, the child's left without discipline. And this is my point: is that the child will be more likely, in my opinion, to go into the kind of zone of being groomed than if they do have a mother. No, if they do have a father in the picture. Yeah. I think that the groomers, rapists, Islamic groomers, are more likely to target individuals without a father in the picture as well, because they've got one less person to worry about. So that's my whole view. That's my whole view on that as well. If they send me off to war, there's a lot of things that I can't protect my child on: terrorism, mass stabbings, being groomed, that kind of stuff. So my fight is here. Yeah, I was born in the UK. I'm going to die in the UK, even if that means I'm getting beheaded by about 50 Muslims on a chopping block. Then so be it. But I'm never going to go to Poland or to a different country because I'm British. Well, I'm actually Welsh. Well, I was born in Wales, but I'm happily British. I'm happily Welsh. So I was born here. I'm going to die here. That's what I think.
I was going to ask that because I was surprised. I wasn't sure exactly where you were from, but I saw the Students Against Tyranny logo, and I couldn't help but notice that there was a certain distinctive emblem in there represented the land where I'm from. So I'm really, really happy to see that. But it is exactly as you said. It's like it's almost like they're trying to get the fathers or the would-be fathers, the aspiring fathers, these kinds of people out of the way. Because then they're going to bring in these people to do whatever. And the biggest thing is that the two things which I wanted to bring up there is that absolutely you mentioned it. I can't remember where I saw it. I'm not sure if it was an interview on Andrew Gold on Heretics or another podcast I'd seen, but the guy talking and I think he'd done some kind of work with, pedophiles or sex offenders. And there was this guy, I believe he talked to, who was very, very prolific with it. And he would ultimately ask, like, what is the main thing that you look for? And the one thing that would deter this predator, again, I'm not sure who it was or who it is. I don't even know if they're still alive or they've passed on, whatever it is. The biggest thing that would signal to them if a child could be a good candidate for grooming and to be a victim would be if they looked at the father and if they saw the father was a threat or not. That would be one of the biggest things that would either be like, yep, it's go time, or no, it's not good. And that's where I think that the one war that's been waged a lot on at the moment, people love to use the term toxic masculinity, but I think there's a war that's been waged on masculinity in general that has massively contributed to these problems, because anybody that would try to stand up in this regard, or if you're a man and you try to exercise these typically masculine qualities, you get called, toxic masculinity and all of these different things. But the threat of the father, if the father was a threat, then that would be a massive deterrent to if this person would go after the child. If the father wasn't, then it would be a massive pro to go after the child. So we definitely need strong father figures in a society. And I'll let you talk in a minute because I've forgotten the second point I was going to raise.
No, I was sorry. I was just going to say, right, the toxic masculinity, we get it wrong. It does exist. But toxic masculinity is not masculinity. Toxic masculinity is a lack of masculinity, right? Why do we think that, minorities are filling the prisons right now? It's not because they're being arrested for absolutely no reason, like jaywalking, right? Because of their skin color. They're being arrested for violent crimes of a nature such as rape, murder, stabbings, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. The reason, but then we look at the minority community, the black community, and they have a massive issue with fatherlessness. Right?
Massively.
So my point is that the problem in this modern climate is that we've got a lack of male role models, right? You've got people being brought up without a father in the home. They then go to a school which is being taught by 70% women, yeah? And so what happens then, and there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with women, obviously, but you've got to have it balanced. You've got to have the female role models and the male role models. And when they work together, and this is why I'm so against, same-sex marriage, not same-sex marriage, sorry, same-sex reproduction, same-sex adoption, is because you've got to have both role models in the house. And when you're missing either one, things get thrown off in the balance. As I mentioned earlier, when you don't have a father in the house, you're more likely to rape, abuse drugs. You're more likely to go to a prison. You're more likely to commit suicide. So I think toxic masculinity is a lack of masculinity. As if you're a true man, you can, you're stoic in your emotions and you can control your biological urges. Whereas we've got a bunch of people at the moment who are going around raping, they're going around, abusing drugs, and they can't control those urges. And that is the lack of masculinity. That's a lack of masculinity. It's the feminization of men. That's the issue.
Absolutely. You get cancelled for that. You get cancelled for saying that. Feminization of men. You get cancelled for saying that. No.
Bring it on. I've given up tolerance for Lent.
Based, very based. The other thing I was going to say now, and this leads more to the topic of what's going on in the UK at the moment. Because remember, one of the notes I sent over to you was obviously Students Against Tyranny, the tyranny that's going on in the UK at the moment, which I think it's growing more and more every day from what I see, but scarily little people still see how bad we're in. Is that going back to that conscription example, is that if you were to be sent, or if both of us, whoever it is, would be sent to a different country,
I'm good.
All of a sudden, Jedi light stick comes in out of nowhere. Get attacked by, I don't know, Ahsoka over there in the corner. But and the biggest thing is the thing that I've highlighted repeatedly in certain episodes where I've highlighted video clips where look at this thing that's going on, look at that thing that's going on. And given the recent things that come up very, very recently with regards to, I believe it's amendments to the law with regarding prosecution of people who are black and minority ethnic, women, all of these things, where they're lightening the penalties for them, and you're more likely now to go to prison simply if you're a white man or a white Christian man. a lot of people have been saying that at the moment, is that if you were to be sent away, or if we were to be sent away, we can't trust the judicial system in this country. We can't trust the police to take care of people while we're gone. We can't trust the government to take care of our families, kids, elderly relatives while we're gone. Labour taking the winter fuel allowances away, letting, foreign rapists and grooming gangs run rampant in, Rochdale, Oldham, all of these other places. And that a lot of the times, or at least some of the times from what I've seen, the police are not only just turning a blind eye to it, they're actively in on it. So you know that you can't trust people who are in a position of protection to protect your people while you're away. So it's that double whammy of there's so little trust here, and now they want to send us away. It's like, no. I'm like, no, I'm going to die here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, was it Starmer recently put out that he's not going to be allowing MPs to vote on whether we go to war?
Yes.
I mean, how tyrannical is that? I bet you we can find instances through history where tyrants have literally done that, where they've sent their country to war without them ever voting on it, right? It's an extremely common occurrence in the field of corruption and tyranny, yeah? So that's going on right now. You've then got the May elections being cancelled in loads of different parts of the country, including Norwich, because of devolution. They want to devolve the government. But by doing that, they are going to put democracy on hold for a year. No, you do not ever put democracy on hold. Yeah, that is, and the fact that they can delay an election without being challenged by we the people. There are no protests outside these big buildings. The tyranny is going on, and yes, it started under Labour. Wales has been under control of Labour since 1999, and their wait times are worse than it was under the Tories in England, right? So, yes, I completely understand that a lot of this started under the Tories. But the Tories and Labour are two in the same. They are two in exactly the same. They've all got one end goal in mind, and that is tyranny of the UK, tyranny of the people. They are coming after you, they are coming after me, they're coming after all of us. And they are trying their hardest. Now, what they're doing now is they're sending us to war, right? They're sending us to war because that way then the people who are here, they can easily take over our country and turn it into an Islamic nation ruled by Sharia law. That's one thing, right? Because Islam is being used by the elites. The second thing then, they are trying to usher in all this ULEZ, this 15-minute cities, right? They are controlling you through large amounts of debt. You think you'll ever be able to buy a home? No. And ask yourself why you can't buy a home. The reason you can't buy a home is because of illegal immigration. Rise in houses through the fucking roof. There are too many people here. We can't build enough houses to support all of these people, right? So they are... we've then got... we're then controlled by our debt as well. We don't actually own anything. Nothing. We own nothing in this life, right? Everything is either owned by the banks through debt, right? They are owned because they are digital, right? You don't actually own your own songs. You don't own your own films if they are purchased digitally. You don't own your own, for example, Netflix. If you pay for something for a Netflix subscription, that movie can be removed at any time. If you buy a movie through YouTube Movies, they can also remove that as well. So you don't actually own anything either. So you're controlled by your debt. You were controlled through absolutely everything. And they are encroaching more and more of these laws to make it more difficult to say anything, right? I've had police. So when I was working at Voice of Wales, I once, so we used to do a lot of the migrant hotels. We used to expose all of them in Wales, right? And I once exposed one in Tongwelai. And I used the term undocumented alien, which actually, I was taking the piss out of the left because that's a very politically correct term, undocumented alien. It's something that's used in American law, right? Undocumented and then alien just meaning different, right? So I use the term undocumented alien. On a busy Saturday evening, the police sent 2 uniformed officers to my parents' house. I didn't even live with my parents. I lived in Swansea at that time, right? And I got a call up from my parents. They said the police turned up. I rang 101, and all this is filmed, by the way, and you can find it on the Bad Law Twitter. And the police said that the reason that they were sitting at home watching my videos, because they've got local intel officers to do that, by the way, right? They were sitting at home watching my videos, and oh, that's offensive, James. You're going to have to take that down. Okay, well, there's hundreds of people who call me a Nazi every day on Twitter. That offends me too. Take that down. Oh, no, I wasn't actually telling you to take it down, but you just did, right? So they are using these laws not against the left, not against people down a straight line, against both sides of the spectrum. They're using it against the right. And I don't like using the term right. They're using it against the people who are pro-freedom, right? That's what they're doing. They're using these laws against people who are pro-freedom. And by the way, I'm not sitting here saying that I want left-wingers to have their free speech taken or be arrested over tweets. What I'm saying is I don't want it to exist at all. But it does. It's in. And it's getting worse. Right, you want to call Russia a communist dictatorship, say we got to fight against them because they're a tyrannical dictatorship, right? They arrested 300 people for social media posts last year. We had 11,000.
It was 11,000 last year.
It might be 11,000 or 4,000. It was something around that number. Yeah, it was a couple of thousand.
I know there's that famous Konstantin Kissing clip where he's on, I believe he might have been talking from somebody with The Spectator, and it's from a couple of years ago, but he says, do you want to know how many people were arrested for things they put on social media, the UK in the last year, or in Russia in the last year? And he said exactly what you said, about 300 or so, about 330, whatever it was. And I think we were at that point up to about like 3,000 or something like that, or like it was in four figures. Yeah, it was four figures. Put it that way, it was four figures. It was well over double, triple, quadruple the difference, and obviously, you know, how to assess the validity of that claim. Is somebody throwing a claim out there, but it's something that the fact that is not out of the realm of possibility and not out of the realm of surprise is an indictment of what's going on. And you've got people like Peter Lynch, obviously, who held the sign. He was just holding a sign. That's all he was doing. He was holding a sign. I believe it was just saying the police are corrupt. I believe it was saying, or the government is corrupt. It was something like that. But because he was in a certain vicinity of one of these hotels that you mentioned, he was slapped with nearly 3 years. I think he was slapped with a nearly 3-year sentence. And obviously, God rest his soul, he didn't see the end of it. But it's just like, what an awful state to be in. An awful position to be in.
That was provoked deliberately. I remember at the time when these riots were happening, I did a video and telling people to stay inside and not go out. Because I said this is just going to be used to further more freedom is against you, and a lot of people are going to get arrested. Because what they were doing, they were introducing new facial recognition legislation. They were introducing all sorts of new laws because of that is now going to be used against you. And I mean, it goes back to Hegelian dialect. They create the problem, they force people to react, and then they come up with a solution that they wanted all along. It's Hegelian dialect, right? Problem reaction solution. Yeah, and that's what happened here. And it's sad because it ended in people like Peter Lynch losing his life, and a lot of people who are currently in prison, very good people who are in prison, who are in the wrong place at the wrong time, who are locked up for 3 or 4 years, and we're in contact with some of them, and some of them are getting badly beaten by these, Islamic gangs because their face has been painted all over the news. Yeah, so. And then you've got, in Manchester, a friend of mine, Martin Frost, he burnt the Quran.
I remember this. I was watching this live on X.
Yeah, he burnt the Quran. He was arrested by 2 Muslims. It was confirmed. Yeah, 2 Muslims who arrested him. And one thing he texted me that was quite funny was that, James, from the moment I was arrested till the moment I was released, every person who dealt with me was a Muslim. And you're like, this is going on in Britain. Muslims enforcing blasphemy laws in Britain.
Yeah, and it's almost like because of the tensions in that region of the world at the moment, because of the Israel-Gaza conflict, or the Israeli-Arab conflict, whatever you really want to call it, it is Israeli-Muslim conflict, whatever term you want to use. It's almost like the heightened element of terror there. Just can you imagine, you're sat in like an interrogation room or an interview room, whatever it is, and every single person that's coming in one after the other is from that side, so to speak. I'm not necessarily saying that automatically they fit into a certain box because of that. There's been plenty of Muslims that have spoke out against the conflict and wanted the conflict to end, particularly and leaders in the UAE that have warned us, tried to warn our government about what's going on. The fact that they were warning about organisations which are operating in in Great Britain, UK, generating funds for Islamic terror groups that are banned in the UAE. So it's just like, it's a massive indictment on where we are. And it's almost like there's an additional element of terror there, and like, who are we actually being ruled by?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it goes even further than that. So you have something else to do with universities. You have something called Prevent, right? And it was set up in 2002 by Sir David Althmond as part of like the 4Ps strategy to fight terrorism. Their goal is to prevent terrorism before it gets to that point, prevent radicalization, right? They were founded to focus on all sides of the terrorism spectrum, whether that be religious factors or political factors or just, clearly mentally unstable, yeah? And they don't do that, right? They're narrow. So I read the Prevent review, and, we've had a lot of students who've dealt with Prevent in the past as well. And the definition for what they consider Islamic extremism is too narrow, right? To be considered, so for them to work with someone who's at risk of Islamic radicalization, they have to have supported a prescribed group, stated as an admiration of such group, or, that kind of stuff, yeah? Or, admired terrorist, right? Whereas to be considered a right-wing extremist, this is literally the definition. You can watch this is literally part of their criteria. All you have to do is watch a podcast by Tim Pool or Joe Rogan, yeah? That's what they consider far-right extremism, right? So it's very, and then it got worse because of Prevent-funded RICUs, which are like, I can't remember, Research Information Communication Unit, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah. So a Prevent-funded RICU and Prevent-funded CSOs, which are community projects, right, were actually working alongside hate preachers. The Islamic preachers who preach that marrying 6-year-old women is okay. Well, 6-year-old girls is okay. The ones that preach that gay people should be slaughtered. Yeah, those kind of hate preachers. The radical ones. They're the ones that bring people into terrorism organizations. So the government not the government, sorry. You, the taxpayer, are funding the war against you. That's what's going on in this country.
And that's the biggest thing I think that people need to realize is that and I think that's one of the reasons how it's able to progress so quickly is it's being subsidized by the collective taxes that are paid off the backs of all the good working people in this country, whether it's hotels, whether it's benefit schemes, whether it is, exactly as you said, these organizations that are literally almost like working hand in hand or whatever with these hate preachers. You can go on X, you can find all many videos of it. They'll say Sharia will dominate the UK. The UK will be the next Islamic caliphate. All of these things, and it's being funded by us. But funded by all of us. We're literally funding our own destruction.
Yeah, that's the most blatest way you can put it. Is that you are funding your own destruction, and we'll see how long we have left. Apparently, according to originally it was Agenda 21, wasn't it? But according to Agenda 2030, we have 5 years left. 5 years left. So let's see what happens in that time. Because I don't trust reform, to be honest. I think they're our best bet, though. But I don't trust reform. I've had some dealings in the past with Rupert Lowe as well, and I don't like him, funny enough. I'm probably the only person who doesn't like him at the moment. But was it whether reform's going to come save us, whether Trump's going to come save us, we'll have to wait and see. But what I do, and this is the kind of message I want to send to all of you, right, is don't expect someone to come save you. Someone might be coming to save you, right? Someone might be coming to save us, yeah? But don't expect that's going to happen, right? What I mean by that is get out there and do things. Change starts with you. Everything starts with you. That's the words of Ant Middleton in his book, in his book, Last Man In, right? He said, everything starts with you. Yeah.
First man in. That's
it, sorry. So, get out there, start protesting, go to events, start doing journalism, citizen journalism, exactly what you're doing, George, and try and help be that change. Don't expect that someone's going to save you. I mean, it might well be, but, we can't count on that 100% happening. So make sure you play your part in this movement as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what gives me that little glimmer of hope at the moment is that I'm seeing more and more people sort of coming around and seeing it. Like, I'm not sure exactly when it was for me that I sort of first, switched on to how much danger we're in, switched on to the issues we have today and all of these things. I'm not exactly sure when it was. But, it fills me with that little bit of hope that I'm seeing more and more people talking about these things every day. There was an issue you might have seen. I think you might have shared the clip online. It's just down the road from me. It happened literally 10 minutes down the road from me. there was a massive brawl in the middle of a street in a small town known as Blackwood. Now, you probably know it, actually, a small town of Blackwood.
No.
There was because I know Voice of Wales shared it. Several other people shared it. There was a massive brawl. All foreign men, from what I can see, likely. Yeah, there we go. Likely I think it was Turkish men. I think it was two barbers that were like two groups of barbers that were scrapping, but they had weapons. I think they had bars and all of these different things. And I'm literally thinking that is not even 10 minutes away.
No, that was near Clonethy, right?
No. It's just. Do you know where the small? Do you know where Newbridge is?
Yeah.
Just it's in Caerphilly. It's in Caerphilly Borough.
Yeah. No, it is concerning. And the thing is, they're all in cohorts together, aren't they? So within 5 minutes, you can have 100 of them there together. Do you know what I mean? Because they're all linked through social media. And this is the thing with taxi drivers as well. So when we did our investigation in Rochdale, we noticed, we found evidence that they're all in these group chats together. So what happens is, and Tommy's team have said this as well, is that these taxi drivers, they act as the eyes and the ears of the city. And so do the Uber Eats riders and Deliveroo ones, right? They act as the eyes and the ears of the city. And so they're all in group chats, they're all on the phone together. If you've ever walked into a taxi and you've heard them on the phone to each other, right? So if they see something suspicious, they'll tell each other. And that's how the grooming gangs operate, is through these taxis. If they talk, it's basically a massive network, and that's how it happens. And so the fighting is the same thing. If one of them gets fighting, they're a massive, the one thing I will say is you'll never see a homeless Muslim. They're a very strong community. They're close, they're more close-knit than the British, right? And I will give them that. So when one of them gets into a fight, within 5-10 minutes, hundreds of them will be out there. Hundreds of them. Yeah. So that is the thing about the Islamic community, but it's also scary because these are all fighting age men. Yeah? And within, we saw what happened after the riots. You had the Muslim Defence League reform, and they started walking around Bradford, which is mostly, it's mostly Islamic. So they are very much, if there is a war, they'll be straight on it. Yeah. So we've got to be ready. And I'm not saying, we've got to be ready for war or whatever, because I know counter-terrorism should watch this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you've got to train because it's healthy to train. So get into the gym. Yeah, get into the gym. Get yourself ready. Get yourself training. Because you don't know what's going to happen. We could go into World War III. We could go into an apocalypse. We could go, civil war could happen. So basically, just get yourself physically fit and get yourself ready for that. For anything that could happen.
Absolutely. I think the one thing counter-terrorism might be looking at you for in what you just said there, though, is I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have dead named or misgendered Bradford. I believe it's known as Bradfordistan now.
No, sorry, I do retract what I said. It is Bradfordistan now. Yeah,
But yeah, no, it could be a very, very scary time. But yeah, exactly as you said, and the training, being physically healthy is one of the best things that you can be at the moment, and it might just be the thing that saves your life in a lot of ways. Certainly was for me when I came very close to losing it. That's for sure. It certainly was for me, and how I was able to recover as quickly as I did from an illness that nearly took me off this planet. So, but that's a story potentially for another time. But I think I can't remember if there's anything that I really else wanted to go through. I just go through my notes a bit quick.
Yeah, course.
The only other thing, really, before we get on to a little bit about where people can find you, maybe future work projects you've got coming up, that obviously you're at liberty to talk about those kinds of things. I understand, things might be, sensitive projects and all stuff like that. So not expecting you to divulge anything like that. We talked a little bit about when we were talking about the universities, because I think it's really important to drill down on those. I think that's where a lot of the radicalization and a lot of the indoctrination is happening, and really even down as low as comp and primary school. But have we got a little bit more information about the Athena Swan stuff itself? Because I've got in my notes here from one of the documents you put in a daily debrief video, which I think it might have been one of the ones. It looked like it's recorded in a studio somewhere because it's got like the soundproofing.
It's the same studio as this one. I've just retiled it.
Oh, there we are. And I think it might have been you and Sydney, I think, might have been recording it from May last year. But the one thing I noticed was that a quote from a document that you shared in that video, and it says about the Athena Swan admission. So the University of East Anglia, it has a gender equality plan securing funding through Horizon Europe EU Research and Innovation Framework Program. And I took a quote from the screenshot you put on there. The UEA is steadfast in its commitment to ensuring and championing gender equality, primarily articulated in our Athena Swan admissions. What does, if you have any information, that is, what is this Horizon Europe EU Research and Innovation Framework Program? So see, it strikes me just by its title as like one of these, globalist NGO kind of ideas, but I might be having the wrong idea there. Have you got any information about that?
It's been a while since I've gone down that pathway, so I'm definitely going to revisit that in my research, because it's been a while since, and I've gone through a lot of this stuff when I was writing my book, and it just overloads your brain sometimes.
Absolutely.
From what I remember, it is tied in with the kind of UN global proposals, that kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
So they're trying to. So all I know is that the EU is involved in funding a lot of these organisations that are trying to promote a gender equality and racial equality narrative. And I believe that's what the framework is tying in with as well. So the framework that the Athena Swan Charter provides, which is to do with, I don't know if you're aware, so the Athena Swan Charter, they have a framework for what's acceptable and what they classify as promoting a gender equality narrative. I believe that directly comes from the European Union, the EU. So that's what I think there.
Interesting. You see, like in theory, I think it's one of the biggest things that's been betrayed in massive ways. A lot of people like to say it hasn't worked, but in my opinion, it's just been one of those things that's been massively betrayed. Is that in theory, we're not supposed to have any ties to the European Union and anything like that anymore. We're supposed to be more self-determined and able to, take what we have on the global, and I won't use global. I don't really like that term. I feel like it's a tainted term now. The international market, should we say? But when I saw that, I was just like, that's quite interesting. And it made me think about, like, again, almost like an octopus analogy. How many tentacles does the EU have in all of these different things still via, whether it be charities, whether it be NGOs? And it certainly looks like we've certainly got a lot more work to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the EU, just to kind of give people a bit of background into the fact that we haven't really left. Yeah, Brexit hasn't really been accomplished. Is that the European Union Convention on Human Rights, or the European Court of Human Rights, is actually refusing to let the UK deport terrorists, rapists and other foreign criminals. But in 2013, 133 foreign criminals, people who are here illegally and yet are here committing crimes, they avoided deportation because of the European Court on Human Rights, Brexit hasn't really happened. The reason we haven't seen any benefits from it is because all the money that's saved is going into woke shit like rainbow crossings and immigration, and we haven't really left the courts. And so the court was going to be one of the main benefits. So that's the reason we're not seeing any benefits from Brexit. To all those Ramonas who are complaining that it was all a lie and that we've got no benefits. The reason we haven't got any benefits is because we've got incompetent politicians who, well, they're not incompetent, they're smart. They don't want us to leave the EU.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's going on. So you think you have a choice, You think you have democracy. It took 4 years for your vote to actually matter. 4 years, and it still hasn't been done properly. So that's my my view on that. And what was the other question? Sorry, you wanted to ask me?
No, I think that was it. Just I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, really, to be honest, because you mentioned the Athena Swan and how it's tied in with all of the gender and race equality narratives, but obviously coming from that, race Marxist, anti-racist, Ibram X. Kendi, present discrimination to atone for past discrimination, future discrimination to atone for present discrimination, those kinds of things. So it's, it brands itself as anti-racist and race equality, when in reality it's one of the most racist things that could ever really be thought up, and how then that ties in with how the EU, and how the fact that we haven't really left. And I spoke about this with Tim Davis as well on the podcast, and he brought up that we, under these articles that say right to family life, and what is it? Right to not face persecution in their home country or something like that, which they can play on, these different articles that they can play on.
So
and it's just like...
It's inhumane or degrading treatment. So if we deport someone back to Jordan, for example, and they might be tortured upon their return or humiliated in any way, then we can't deport them. So that's under the European Convention on Human Rights, yeah.
So under that ECHR article, that's been made our problem, not the perpetrator who's
Not
here illegally
entirely.
and shouldn't have done what he done.
Not entirely. So if we notice France and Hungary, right, they're also members of the EU, yet they can deport migrants en masse if they choose to. The reason that the UK can't isn't actually entirely because of the European Court of Human Rights. It's because of the the 1998 Human Rights Act that was enshrined that enshrined the European Convention on Human Rights in our legal system by Tony Blair, right, in 1998. So the 1998 Human Rights Act basically says that we've got to listen to all of the articles in the European Convention on Human Rights. We have to listen to the European Court of Human Rights, and we have to follow their guidelines and their laws. So it's thanks to Tony Blair that we have to follow that legislation. If we didn't have the 1998 Human Rights Act, there's not much the European Court of Human Rights could do.
So this is actually more something that Tony Blair enshrined into law. That's actually like the main problem. The ECHR, then the problems with that is more so compounded on top of that. Would you say? So you have the 1998 Human Rights Act is the bedrock almost of the reason why we can't get rid of them, and then the ECHR is just coming in on top of that. Wow, I didn't know that. It kind of reminds.
So we got the European Court of Human Rights, and then we got to revoke the 1998 Human Rights Act, and that way then we couldn't get fined, and no law could be enforced, and we couldn't be sued. But this is another thing, right? All these people who want to avoid deportation, they go on legal aid and use our money to sue us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah. And they use our money to sue us. It's not even so they use our money to sue us, and then we can't do anything because we've got the 1998 Human Rights Act and the European Court of Human Rights telling us, so we just got to get rid of both, man.
I say, hasn't there been another thing, just on that note we mentioned about legal aid, hasn't there been another thing that's been increasingly politicized, whereby some people, in order to try and fight their cases, they've actually been denied legal aid, just regular British people that may be, persecuted by the state, they've actually been denied legal aid, but these foreign criminals, whether they're here legally or illegally, whatever it may be, are being able to sue us with our own money.
It's disgusting, man. It really is. It's a shit show, and this is the country that we're living in. So, this is what I say to all of you people watching. Please get out there and join us on the streets, because we are protesting literally every week. Yeah, every week we're out on the streets. So please, please, please join us. No one's going to come save us. It's our job to save ourselves.
Absolutely, and that ties us nicely into what you guys have got coming. Because one of the things that I was gonna ask, mainly, so maybe you could send me, and obviously I could put it out there or whatever. Is have you got like a calendar of events for the next year or months, whatever it is, or is it just something you put out on social media as it comes out?
So we used to, but because I'm doing a lot more journalism, I spend less time doing activism. But we've got a lot of big team, but we've lost a lot of our funding, right? So because we've lost a lot of our funding, paying for other students to organise their own protests is a little bit difficult. They've got to kind of self-fund themselves, but I don't mind chipping in quite a bit of money if they need it. They just have to ask how much. So right now, we don't have a calendar, but I do have an event happening. What day is it? I have an event happening on Saturday that I can't go into the specifics of because it's really going to wind up the left. So I'll send you a video of that when it comes out.
Awesome.
And then tomorrow I'm at I've been asked to go cover a reform rally, so I'm going to go cover that. In a couple of months, I think that one of our some of our team wants to organise a protest in North England, because North England's where we get the most Antifa, so they want to do that. Other than that, we haven't really got any events coming up. We've got my documentary coming out from Rochdale soon enough. I'm going to a Patriots of Britain demonstration on the 22nd of March in London, Unite for the Children. And then there's one in April in Manchester, which is also Unite for the Children, I'm going to support. The thing is, every time I organise a demo, I have a lot of support from this other organisation, Patriots of Britain, football lads. and they come out to support me all the time. So for a while now, I've been trying to support them as much as possible because of how much support they've shown me. Yeah, in a couple of weeks now, 'cause summer's back, it's lovely and sunny outside. I'm going to have a better idea of our events for the year. But we have got a lot of journalism in the making. So make sure to follow Vox Populi on YouTube. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, James Harvey 2503. Make sure to follow Students Against Tyranny on Twitter and Telegram as well. Just Students Against Tyranny. Make sure, if you are a student, you are a young person, you want to get involved, studentsagainsttyranny.com/join. It's completely free. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. But there's a lot of things in the pipeline that unfortunately I'm not at liberty to discuss. One thing I am at liberty to discuss is that I recently wrapped up an episode, a podcast with Lynn Pinchers, who's a female pool player that was forced to compete against a man. I recently filmed an episode with her for Urban Scoop. That's coming out in a couple of weeks. I've also filmed an episode with a child sexual abuse survivor as well, which should be out in a couple of weeks for Urban Scoop. So yeah, a few interesting things coming out very shortly.
Awesome. So you said it was James Harvey 2503 on X or on Twitter. That's where they can find you. And like I say, you do a lot of great work from what I've seen. I've really appreciated a lot of the work that Urban Scoop and other organizations have done in that regard to really highlight like yourself having faced police officers and your family having faced police officers. It's relentless, but it's one of those things. It's never been more important, at least for us, than it is right now. I'd have to say, I think if the 11th hour isn't already here, it's already gone. So we really need to start. Exactly as you're saying, the message of unity. The message of unity is understanding we all have a common enemy, and it's the people that are quote unquote elected to represent us. And if nothing is done, well, I dread to think what's going to happen after that. But unless you have any other resources or anything like that to tell the audience about, you mentioned a book, but obviously with how busy you've been with journalism and all stuff like that at the moment, obviously, there's only so many things you can do at once. But I'm sure that'd be very, very interesting if it was to come out. But I'll
let you know when it does, mate, because I'm going to go on like a media tour. So when it comes out, I'm going to let all my friends in media know, do a bunch of podcasts about it, book reviews, that kind of stuff. So yeah, mate, I'll send you a message when it comes out.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, James, this has been a pleasure. Lots of great stuff that I didn't know, and lots of things that clarifying the things that I already had some knowledge of. But the work you do is amazing. Please keep it up. And looking forward to following wherever you end up next.
Thank you so much for having me on, George. It's been a pleasure.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My sit down with Mr. James Harvey. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it valuable, insightful, and useful. Leave your comments down below with the main things that shocked you, main things that you took away from it, valuable insights you took away from it, maybe some glimmers of hope in there as well. We're all in this fight together. We're all in this fight together. We have to be unified, not divided. United we stand, divided we fall. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Godspeed.